Welcome to the latest episode of Eating the Fantastic, the first of 4 coming to you from the 83rd World Science Fiction Convention held last month in Seattle, Washington. I'm Scott Edelman, a writer, editor, podcaster, and fan who attended his first Worldcon, the 32nd Worldcon in Washington, D.C., as a teenager back in 1974. And while I haven't attended every Worldcon since then, though if time and money hadn't been a barrier I would have, it's always been an important part of my convention experience, whatever the con, to head out of the hotel and exhibit halls for meals with friends. That has always been as much fun as the cons themselves, and that's why Eating the Fantastic exists, to allow you to take part in that aspect of the community. This time around, you'll get to take a seat at the table with the award-winning writer Eugenia Triantafyllou. Eugenia Triantafyllou has been nominated for the British Fantasy, Hugo, Ignite, Locus, Nebula, and World Fantasy Awards, and was on the Hugo Awards ballot that weekend for her novelette Loneliness Universe, published last year in Uncanny. Earlier this year, she appeared on the Nebula Awards ballot twice, for both Loneliness Universe as well as Joanna's Bodies, the latter of which was published in Psychopomp. Last year, she won the Shirley Jackson Award for her novelette 6 Versions of My Brother Found Under the Bridge, which also appeared in Uncanny. In addition to those venues, she's been published in Reactor.com, Lightspeed, Strange Horizons, Apex, Sunday Morning Transport, The Deadlands, and elsewhere. She's a graduate of the Clarion West Writers' Workshop. This conversation was captured for you on the Thursday of the con between my panel on coping with short story rejection, where every single one of us had been rejected by co-panelist and Asimov's editor Sheila Williams, and my autograph session. Eugenia and I headed off a few blocks away for lunch at Din Tai Fung, where I introduced her to her first soup dumplings. Though it was quite a noisy spot and she had first expressed some doubts about recording a podcast there, my Namano sound capsule once again performed remarkably well. That background roar is way suppressed and our voices rise way above it all, and though I occasionally raise my voice to be heard over the din, a din which you really won't hear, you will have no trouble ingesting Eugenia's wisdom. I'm so grateful the Namano hardware software package allows me to bring you voices from venues where recording was once impossible. As I've said before, I'm not getting paid to say that. I just love the device, am stunned by what it does, and can't stop talking about it to anyone who'll listen. After all that, you might be wondering, why am I asking you to follow me along to a restaurant in the first place? Aside from it being a special part of convention going, as I said up top, chatting over plates of food in restaurants relaxes my guests and me as well. Our tongues are loosened, any pressure which might have been brought about in a studio setting fades away, the conversation gets much more intimate than it would otherwise be, and suddenly we're no longer a host and a guest, but just a couple of friends out for a meal. One comment before you dive in about the food talk you'll hear. I left out our discussion of which items on the menu we wanted to order. I didn't think you needed to hear that, but I did keep in our beverage discussion because of the way that segued into the true start of the conversation about how and why Eugenia uses food in her fiction. I also left in my later soup dumpling explanation because there seemed no artful way to cut it. Now please join me and Eugenia Triantafyllou at Seattle's Din Tai Fung as we begin with a plate of wood ear mushrooms and a vinegar dressing. I'm going to get jasmine hot tea.
My cappuccino was hot, so now I would like something
cold. Okay.
You know, in Greece we have freddo cappuccino, and that's what I drink all the year. We have 2 specific coffees that are cold. It's frappe, we call it frappe, because you shake it. It was created in Thessaloniki, in northern Greece, in a convention where some people were from Nestlé were selling kids' chocolate, and they had the shaker for that. And some guy wanted to leave the exhibition and get some coffee, but couldn't. So he put instant coffee in the shaker and invented frappe. And that was the most popular coffee in Greece.
Really?
Until Freddo Cappuccino, which is a more a recent addition to this legacy, if you will. So Freddo cappuccino is basically 2 shots of espresso, some ice, and the frothing milk on top. And it was also invented by some small coffee shop that they were trying, to spice things up with a specific brand. They were bringing some specific brand of Arabica, and they wanted, to make a cold coffee. And this became the most popular. But when I come here and I say, do you have a Freddo cappuccino? Can you put some ice instead and cool it down? And then I always get some latte instead.
Well, I'm sorry that we can't have this conversation over that. We should be having it over that. We should be having it over fried lamb brains. I feel we should have it from reading all your stories. There's so much food in your stories. You have fried lamb brains and bone soup and Greek mom bolognese.
Yes.
In your story, 6 virgins my brother found under the bridge.
Yes.
You use the food very well in your stories. And I know that your mother was a cook. So how much of this is something that happens naturally when you do your writing, or is it just that's who you are, that of course food would be in your stories in an important way to tell a story and setting and character and all that?
I probably talked about my mom being a cook somewhere, but now I completely forgot about it. But yeah, I don't even think about it that much. It's just, just makes sense because I'm not a planner. I'm a complete pantser. So I just write, and I'm like, okay, some food should be added here.
Okay.
And, it depends on obviously, if the story is about food, like bone soup, it's a bit more intentional. But if it's just a story about other things, I just go with the flow. And there are some Greek memes, if someone can say, about the food, like frappe. Like a knowledge that all Greeks share about what makes this coffee interesting or funny, and like the bolognese thing, that it's not actually bolognese, but people call it bolognese in Greece, and every house has a different one, and everyone judges each other's cooking skills.
Well, that would be difficult if you went to your friend's house and it was her mom's bolognese, it wouldn't be the same as yours. No. Every mom has their own version of what it is.
I have been to other people's houses and I've eaten some things, and when I was a kid, because as an adult you have a different understanding.
Well, in terms of food, how are you with eating when you get nominated for an award? Now, the first time you got nominated, it was during COVID, so there was no banquet. You didn't have to sit there. And I know there are people that when they get nominated, you're up for the World Fantasy Award and for the Nebula Award for My Country the Ghost. But eventually, you just keep getting nominated again and again and again. Sometime, were you at a banquet or did you do them all remotely?
This is the first time.
So we have because some people do these and they're nominated and there's a banquet and they can't eat because they're just so nervous. What kind of a nominee are you?
If there is a food, I'm eating it.
Okay. So on Saturday night, when you go to the party that they have, like a cocktail party beforehand, you will be able to just be, everything is wonderful. You'll be able to drink. You'll be able to eat a little. Okay. So you're a generally calm person then?
No, I just...
with that?
I don't think I will win. But also, I am nervous about speeches. This is what I am nervous about. I do not like to go on stage and give speeches.
Well, but you were not going to be spontaneous, or are you? Do you have something written down?
I have something written down because I would not, if I hadn't written it down, I would just not go up there. Amy offered to give my speech for the Nebulas this year. And because I was nominated twice this year, I gave her 2 speeches. I did not win, but she had them with her. Yeah. So she had her own speech and 2 speeches by me. Yeah. And there was this running joke between the finalists that was saying that maybe we should all give our speeches to Amy.
Oh, everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. So if somebody wins, Amy will be and we'll be looking for the speeches, for the right speech at the last moment.
Well, I think weren't the other nominees there? Were you up against Jennifer Hudak? Was Jennifer Hudak in your category? And I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it was short story. Jennifer, I think it was short story.
Oh, the other one. Yeah.
For me, it was Angela Liu, Thomas Ha, Christine Canorsi, Anselma, And me twice.
So how do you feel when you get nominated? Is it a surprise? Does it feel, well, why this story rather than that story? Or some of the stories you feel, yeah, that one deserved it?
I think it's a pleasant surprise every time because you can't take anything for granted anyway. It's nice. I think the extra surprise this year was that Joanna's Buddies was also nominated for the Nebula. So when I got the call, and for the person that announced to me, they did not say initially that I was doubly nominated. They said, you're nominated for Loneliness Universe. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. That's great. And then they said, but you are also nominated, after 10 minutes, they added, you are also nominated for Joanna's Buddies.
Wait, so they let you get all excited and
Yes.
they talk, and then they come with the other one? Wow.
And then they said, you're also nominated for Joanna's Buddies. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? They were like, Joanna's Buddies. And I was like, this year, 2025, this year? It was like, this, I don't know, for some reason, this was the question I could ask. If this was this year. I don't know why.
And how did it feel competing against yourself for an award?
I don't know. I initially thought maybe I should drop out.
Some people do. Some people say, oh, one has more of a chance of winning, but then if I take the other,
It's generally because it felt weird occupying two spaces.
Right.
But it ended up that there were more, because there was a tie somewhere. They did not say which tie. So there was one more finalist, like myself or the other person. So it was still the same amount of people nominated.
Yeah. But how would you, if let's say you were going to remove one of them, how would you make up your mind which one? If you said, oh, I only want one of them.
I would ask my friends.
Oh, to say which one do you think has more of a chance, or which one?
Or which one you like more. I guess I discovered that completely different people like these stories. Like the people who like Loneliness, it's not like they don't like Joanna's Buddies. It's more like they are indifferent to the other one. So they like one and they're indifferent to the other one.
Thank you so much.
So I have discovered that people either really like one or the other, but not both. So it would be hard, but also very interesting.
These are the soup ones?
Yeah, and then just be careful, it's pretty hot.
And the steam is rising.
Beautiful babies that we are going to consume.
Wait for you not to hurt
So these
yourself.
have soup inside.
Right. So basically, when you eat them, very delicate. It's too soon.
Yeah.
Very delicately, you get the spoon underneath, and then you bite a tiny little hole at the top, so you can drink the soup out of it before you then eat the rest of the dumpling.
I will watch you eat one.
The first one.
Not now because they're hot, but later.
So what are you going to do? Because based on the statistical analysis, you have one story, then another story, then two stories. So next year, when it's three stories,
everybody made that joke.
Yes.
But
You'll never know.
I haven't written enough novelettes this year. So it will only be, if it is something is nominated, it will only be one story.
Okay. Well, I am fascinated by the idea that the fact that we met at all is a big accident. The fact that I had any of your stories to read is a big accident. That you could have been a comic book artist. Originally, when you were in your 20s, you say you were doing comic book artwork, and you thought you were going to be a cartoonist.
Yes.
So take me back to that before the fiction writing. Tell me about finding the comic book community and the telling stories that way.
So you know how some people know they're going to be writers when they were children?
Uh-huh.
I didn't know
That was not you.
No. I just liked drawing things. So I used to draw on every surface, including books, like school books, and I like that. And later when I went to college, I didn't do anything with the drawing, but later when I went to college for a completely different thing, tourist business management. This is my undergraduate degree. There was this very artistic girl who had met another girl in the nursing school, and this girl was part of a team that were doing comics, a fanzine. And I went to the first ever comic convention in Greece when the first year it happened. That was, I think, 2008. That was the first ever comic convention in Greece, and it was called Comic Dome, and it's still going strong, but we have more conventions. And I was at their table, and I saw them selling their design, and my friend had it wasn't even a story, she had a few images in the, and I was like, oh my God, I could have my art in design and have people buy it. And it was like really mind-blowing for me.
So you were already drawing. You were an artistic kid then.
I was, but only in a visual way. I did not write anything. I was only drawing. And I was like, oh my God, I could have my pictures and my drawings and everything. And I got so jealous at that moment, but in a good way, like not envious. I was like, there was this driving force. I was like, I have to have my art in this tiny fanzine that 10 people are going to buy. And this is a very big deal for me. And so I joined them. But then the more I was, drawing, the more ideas kept coming to me. And I was not very good at drawing because I hadn't taken any lessons. I was self-taught. And I was also kind of lazy, to be honest. And I didn't want to focus both on the storytelling and on drawing. And I said, okay, I will pick one to improve. And I picked writing because I thought it would be easier. Okay. I thought I would cut corners, I'm saying, okay, I'm lazy, I don't want to improve in both. I will try to focus on one. And I thought writing would be easier because I already knew how to write words.
But were there actual comic book stories that you drew that were completed?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I had a few.
Okay, and what were they about? Were they memoirs or superheroes or historical? What kind of stories were they?
There were different ones. Okay, so most of them were parodies actually, which, I now don't write parodies, but there was one that was a parody of an alien invasion. There was one that was a superhero parody, and there was one that we didn't start because that's when I stopped drawing comics. That was called Tales from the Crete, from the island of Crete, and it would be like Tales from the Crypt.
Yes, it's a pun there.
Yes, and it would have some classic Cretan figures from Greek folklore, and it would be horror stories with a funny bend. And it would have the same colors of Tales from the Crypt. And it would have instead of the Crypt Keeper, it would be the Crete Keeper. And he would be an old man. Anyway, it sounded very funny back then.
Yes, and you published these then?
No, we only did a test cover. I will show you later.
Ah. So did you publish anything?
I published them in the fanzine.
And does that mean the next year at that convention you came back and you were at the table? And
yes, and I was at the table, and the next year, and I started on 2008, I became part of the team, and then by 2010, I stopped, and I started only writing. So I started writing on 2010 at the end of the year, like November. And how I started writing was, again, completely random. They told me about a forum where people upload their speculative stories. So I entered the forum and there was a competition. They did the competitions with the genre. So it was a science fiction focused competition and the theme was sex. I was like, okay. And I started writing a story. At that moment I saw it. And I sent it to them for the competition. And I became a member of the forum.
And that was your first story?
Yes. It was a story about sex.
Okay, and what year was that?
Science fiction. Early 2011.
Okay.
And people hated it, but I still think, well, they thought it had promise, but it was strange. It was a man who is convicted to a death penalty for intergalactic war crimes through sex.
That's how he was killed?
Yes.
By sex?
Yes.
Okay, they wore him out or something?
There were some pills.
Sex with aliens or something?
There was a designated person.
Okay.
Like, it's like in the movies or in the past where it was person who would kill you with an axe.
Yes.
This person would kill you with sex. So they would kill you with your pills.
Okay.
And when you orgasmed, you would die. Your head would explode.
Okay. And they didn't like that, huh?
I don't know. Maybe they thought it was cheesy or something. I don't know. It might have been, but it was the first idea.
So that was
I
the
had.
first story.
Yes.
You know, and yet the odd thing is, they chose the topic, not you. So it's not as if that would have been your first story.
There were a lot of cheesy stories in that competition, so it was fine. It was fine.
Well, I'm just thinking, in a world where you wrote your first story just for yourself rather than the competition, I'd wonder what you would have chosen as opposed to that story. So,
it was.
But you went to a prompt, so the prompt.
Yeah, the prompt helped. I was like, okay, where do I begin? Here's the prompt.
Yeah.
Now I don't fare well with prompts right now.
Yeah.
I'm more like free association.
Okay.
But back then it was a good place to start, you know.
Well, before we move on, I think the soup dumplings have cooled enough not to kill us.
Okay.
So basically,
I'm watching.
Basically, you want to, because the dough is very thin, you want to try and get it on there and bite the top.
I see.
And then suck out the innards. Or you could just pop the whole thing in your mouth, but you might burn yourself. But it's got a very delicate, you try not to break it so you don't lose the soup. So that's how you do those.
Pretty good.
So now let me wrap my head around your history. So 2011, you write this story for the prompt. Am I correct that your first published story is The Heart as a Lonesome Hunter in 2017? That's what the Internet Science Fiction Database says, but they're not always
no,
correct.
I think my first published story was in Black Static.
And what year would that have been?
2000, either 2015 or 16, because that was the one that qualified me to join Codex. And it was my first published story. And what it was, that's a good question.
And so what year, again, I'm trying to picture it all. I never saw any place where it said what year you attended Clarion. So
2019.
2019, okay. So you started selling stories and publishing stories before Clarion?
Yes, a few, not many. Because back then I was writing around 2 stories per year. That was my speed. So it was not very fast.
Were you busy with the day job that your degree had you for?
What We Are Molded After. That was my first story in Black Static. 2017, yes. Sorry. And then I joined Codex with this particular story. What I was doing, I was studying because, I was working at a tourist office and hotels, and the job was very stressful because service jobs are very stressful. So I was studying completely different subject for a very niche school of higher tier public employees. So if you entered that school, it was 2 years and they paid you while you studied. And then you would get immediately hired by a ministry to run some sort of, higher position, higher level public administration school. And the school was called the School of Public Administration. And everybody wanted to get there because it was a guaranteed career, job, good money, good a leave, and everything that person wants theoretically from a job. I was very close to getting in, but it was like 2,000 people for 100 places, and I was like 150, and that was only like 0.2 in the score. So like 50 people between me and.
But you were saying, I really want to write. That's what I would rather.
I don't know. I really don't know. Like, the reason I started writing in English was because of my partner. So when I was on that forum, I met my partner who was writing in English even though he was Greek. And he lived in Sweden back then, and I lived in Greece. So I also moved to Sweden at the same. I moved to Sweden in 2012. So the timeline is starting doing comics 2008. I go to the forum 2010. I find my partner there, and I also find Nasos, Natalia Theodoridou. We met I met both of them almost at the same time. And we are for life now. And then 2012, I moved in Sweden. So I could not get immediately a job. I had to learn Swedish in the immigrant school. And so that gave me some time. And my partner was also a writer and had a small publisher. And he's also working as a cover artist.
So you have English, Swedish, Greek,
French, Greek, French, English, then some Italian, some Turkish because of the tourist school also they teach you foreign languages because you have to speak foreign languages.
All right. So now when you started writing those first stories, were they in Greek? Were they in English?
Very first stories, they were in Greek. And then my partner who had a small publisher in English, actually, even though he was Greek living in Sweden, Greek Swedish. He told me, you can write in English if you want to. The audience is bigger, there is money. Well, in Greece there isn't any money.
How difficult a transition was that to say I'm going to write fiction in English? Because conversational English is one level, and then artistic English with the beauty of the language and the metaphors. Tell me about beginning to do that.
You do get it. Because, yes.
I mean, obviously you got there because the people who are English readers love your work and nominate you for awards, so you were successful in doing that. But tell me about how you did it.
So, when I met George, that's when I decided to write in English. But the thing was that other Greeks did not believe that Greeks could write in English. So the problem initially was not my own confidence or English-speaking readers, was other Greek writers.
Were they trying to discourage you and say, just stick to writing in Greece?
There were two fractions. One was like, how dare you betray the language and write in English? And the other one was Greeks or people who don't have English as their first language cannot write in English. And one of them was a translator, actually, from English to Greek. And he told me that since I never lived in an English-speaking country for a year or more, or I haven't done any MFAs or anything in an English-speaking country to get the sense of the language, I could not write in English. Instead, a couple of friends of his who were Greek and had lived abroad and had done some MFAs in writing, they could write in English because they knew how people in Manchester spoke, for example. The problem was that you did not understand, and I get it from a translator point of view because you are translating someone else, was that I wasn't trying to write like someone who lives in Manchester, for example. I was trying to write like a Greek person, but in English. So I was translating myself, not someone else. But they didn't know that. Anyway, and I would be discouraged if I didn't have my partner tell me, this is nonsense, just, keep writing. I have a lot of self-doubt, so I would probably give up, not just because they said it, but also because I am lazy deep down, and I would not have stuck with it. But George kept telling me to, keep trying it.
Now, let's say I had all of your stories before the first one. I don't know how many there were before it got published. Let's say I read them all. Well, how many were there? We'll get into that.
Like in Greek and English?
Yes, before you saw that first story, how many did you have to write in order to...
They're actually, everything I've ever written is all online, either in Greek or in English. Because I immediately started writing to an audience, even if that audience was, the forum.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking I would see, if I could read them all, I would imagine I would see two things happening. One is becoming a better writer and understanding how you tell a story, and the other is a better command of artistic English, that the two things would be happening at the same time. Would you say that was there? Because I would,
yes,
I would think very first story, and if I say, I'm going to read the first story and the fifth story and the 10th story, there would be a progression more than one way.
I think it would be more voice, a more confident voice in English. I think that would be the difference. Like, the stories hopefully will be better, but also the thing would be a better command of my artistic voice, my writing voice.
Mm-hmm. And so you started selling some stories, and then you at one point said, I know, I'm going to come to Seattle and go to Clarion. What made you decide to do that? Who were you in terms of feeling, I really need that boost to learning what to do? And why that particular year versus any other year?
I actually did not know if I could apply for Seattle, for Clarion, because I thought I would have to have first a lot of books published. that it was for more advanced writers. And I was like, okay, if I ever write books and if I ever publish them, maybe then I can apply. So it was not in the plan. But then, Nasos, Natalia Theodoridou, got into Clarion in 2018, the previous year. And I was like, and he was telling me how it was and how like people are more, early career writers, etc., etc. I was like, okay, maybe I could apply too then next year. And I applied next year and I got in. And it helped me a lot. I think I had these stories, I like 3 short stories out, maybe one was Flash. My biggest sales were one in Strange Horizons and one in Apex. And both were very short. The Apex one was a Flash, and the Strange Horizons one was a short story. And I couldn't figure out how to write longer, like 5,000 words. Because I was not good, it was very disjointed. I was not good with understanding theme and sticking to a theme throughout the story. But when I went to Clarion, where it helped me, like the major help was to understand theme and how to write a long story and sticking to the theme and having things loosely related to the theme and how to reflect on it more. And the other one was my cohort, and we're very close still. Okay. We're like 13 people.
Who are the people who went with you that year? Who else that I would have heard of?
So many
that
people.
Kept with it.
Mega Krishnan, ML Krishnan, Christina Ten, Tim Chawaga, who has a book today out in Hugo House, Nelly Geraldine Garcia Rosas. We are Celeste Rita Baker. She's amazing. I think these are some of the most known writers.
Well, that's a good percentage.
I think Derek Boden, Phoebe Barton. It's because I'm very tired, my brain is. Millie
I love Phoebe Barton, but because of the state of this country, I will not see Phoebe unless I get up to Canada, but Phoebe's not coming here.
I know.
Wisely, I mean, there are lots of people who wisely are not crossing the border, but that's a whole other podcast if we want to get into that. But so who were your teachers that year? The 6 teachers you had?
The first week, we had Elizabeth Hunt. She was amazing and she was a great first week teacher because she was very patient and very kind and she's an amazing person, and she made us feel, like we were a family and bond with each other. Then it was Stephen Graham Jones, which I had the opportunity to scare with cherry tomatoes because my story was about tomatoes. So I took Christina's cherry tomatoes from the fridge and put one tomato in front of every person, including him. And he was really, really loath of the tomato. The tomato was the enemy. Some people ate it, he threw it away immediately.
Too scared.
I don't think he likes tomatoes. So I can threaten him with tomatoes in the future. Then we had Amal El Mokhtar.
Oh, wonderful.
Who was amazing in making me think about themes. And that week was my story, My Country is a Ghost. And she was the one who made the story what it is with her ideas. And also Monteline, one of my classmates, who also had very, very useful ideas on how to rewrite the story.
So you were nominated for a Nebula, an Ignite, and a World Fantasy for that story.
But it's a team effort, I think.
So what exactly did they say that helped you improve it? They helped you pull the thematic pieces
and
through
also
the story?
The story was very different initially. It was only like 2,000 words.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it did not have Remy. It did not have the other person. And that was Monte and Amal's idea that, especially Amal's, that there should be someone who is already there and is second generation immigrant to contrast the person who just came. And in the end was also a strange point because I didn't manage to come across the fact that this person keeps their heritage. And initially it seems like she was assimilating too much, like she was giving up her heritage. And Amal made me think about this. So I rewrote it to make it more clear. And I added, the Day of the Dead that we have in Greece, the Saturday of Souls, basically. That's our Day of the Dead. And that this is something that brings people together and that retains the culture. So she made me think about more. And then I sat down, and for 1 month, when I came back,
got home, yeah.
I rewrote it from scratch. As I was writing, I was deleting a lot and writing a little bit. Deleting, writing. And from the 2,000 words, I think 1,000 words survived, and I added 3,000 new words. That made it very different.
So you were very good when you came back. Some people come back from Clarion and it takes months then to write again because they have all the voices in their head. You were able to just dive right back in.
It took me 1 year to write something new, but I could fix the ones I had. That's not a problem for me. That's why I prefer. When I was starting off, I preferred writing because I did not have the same anxieties, and I did not aim at publication at first. But now, writing is harder because there is nothing there, and I'm also a pantser. And I have to make it up, so it's a lot of mental work. But when you have something, editing it is easier, even if you end up rewriting it. At least you have a better idea of what to rewrite, so there is something there.
Yeah, I'm 100% pantser also, as well. So there's a writer named Peter Straub. I don't know if you've read any of Peter Straub's work. He wrote Ghost Story and other novels, and he said, once I can see what's on the other side of a ravine, I feel no need to build a bridge to it. Meaning if he knows the ending of the story, he won't write the story.
Yeah.
Well, he would. He's no longer with us, but and I'm sort of the same way. If I have a fully realized story in my head, I don't bother to write it because I won't learn anything.
I don't have a fully realized story anyway. I can't have it. But even if I had a more fleshed out story in my head, it would still be very different when it would be written. So it wouldn't matter to me. But what I find matters is I don't want to talk about it with other people or write an outline, because if I write the outline, it's like it takes the pressure of the energy out of the story. But when you have it in your head, the energy is still there. And when you write it, you pass on that energy to the paper, if we can say that, or to the other person by explaining it. But if you don't write it, the pressure is still inside your head. And that's why I don't outline, because I don't want to release that pressure early, before the story is actually written.
How was it being a pantser at Clarion? Because I know there's very much discussion there of story creation and the rise and fall of a story arc and things like that. And if you're just winging it the way I am, and when I went, we weren't even talking pantser versus plotter. The word pantser wasn't there anymore. But were they trying to get you to behave differently? Did you have to be sort of a... Because I'm sure there are many different kinds of writers there. There were probably people who outlined everything and knew it all, and then there are the pantsers.
We had a classmate who is a friend who rewrote the story 5 times in 5 different ways, because he would find the story in every iteration. I would not do that, I would die, but there was no pressure for me. Nobody pressured me anything. And especially when I had trouble writing the week 4 story, I had Monte, my friend, take me down to the room on the blackboard, and I was like, you know what? I am a pantser. I just thought a story idea during a Mal's week, and I want to write it for the next week. And I have no idea what will happen at the end. And we went over and we drew diagrams, and we discussed how the story could go to help me, generate ideas. And I still did my own thing. And that also got published in Uncanny. It was called How the Girls Came Home, where it's a girl that wakes up with different feet every day, animal feet. And also Nasos was my online support, and was also brainstorming how the story would go. So I had a lot of support on filling in the gaps, because it would take me much more time to come up with what would happen in an actual, outside of Clarion. And to speedrun this, I had to use other people's brains. So basically, I'm just using other people's brains on the regular.
For your own, yeah.
Yes.
So you said you came over from Clarion.
That's the secret to success.
Yeah. Yes, don't do it all yourself. So you come home from Clarion and you said it took a year before you wrote anything new. You spent that year working on the stories that you workshop. So how many stories did you end up getting written there? They hope you'll write one a week for each one. Oh, and we didn't get to who were the other teachers. You got to Amal, right? So
Yeah, Amal, then Ibi Soboy, and then it was Jonathan Strahan and Jack Dan together as a pair, and Anne Lake.
Oh, at the end? Oh.
Big guns.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that 3 of our 6 teachers were their first time teaching Clarion.
Really?
Anne Leckie was the first time, Jack Dunn and Jonathan Strahan were the first time, and Amal. Only the other 3, also Ibi. Sorry, 4. 4 weeks. Only Stephen Graham Jones and Elizabeth Hunt were veterans.
Tell me about the transition when you got home. So you worked on the stories that people gave you advice on for that first year, and then you used them up. And you said, okay, now I've got to come up with something new and start doing new stuff. What was that like then? What happened with I have nothing to edit anymore, I have to...
Nothing, I didn't write anything new for a year. And we also moved from Finland to Greece with a car. So we passed through all the countries, and it was a lot. And then just, because my brain rested for so long, I just came up with an idea. I woke up one day, and I had an idea. I don't have many ideas generally as a writer. I don't have plenty ideas. So I just have to wait until an idea comes. And I have trained myself for that, because as I told you, before Clarion, I used to only write like 2 short stories per year, because I was both writing slower, but also I had very few ideas that worked for me. So I was used to just sitting around waiting for an idea to come. I'm not stressing about it. I know it will eventually come, so I just wait for it.
So in terms of pantsing, now having read all of your work in chronological order to make sure I tried to make sense of it all, there are some thematic elements that you return to, or some, not necessarily tropes, but there's some things that you're obviously called to. You're called to ghosts, and you're called to mermaids, and you're called to mother-daughter relationships. So when you have a story happen, is it because the idea just comes to you, or how conscious are you of being called to these concepts that you return to, that you obviously enjoy working at? Is it a conscious thing, or is it just it happens because the next story comes along and it's about a mother, or it's about a...
No, it's more like the premise, and then like the premise might be someone tries to smuggle their mother's ghost into a country, and they can't. Like a ghost is an illegal drug or something, and then I trying to find out where it fits thematically in my own interests, but in a subconscious level. Sometimes I only figure it out after I write the first scenes.
Now you pants a story, but when you're pantsing, do you know as you're going in how big a story it's going to be? Do you know, this will be 5,000 to 7,000 words, this will be 20, this will be flash?
Okay.
Do you have any understanding of that, or do you just learn it as the story's being written?
At first I used to write only flash, as we said, and then after Clarion I could write longer because it was that transformative for me. But sometimes I could not tell. Usually my short story writing was around 5,000 words. And now I can only write novelettes because I started writing more characterization. And now everything is a novelette, but I can't tell exactly how long it will be. Will it be a novelette of 8,000? Will it be 10,000? It is a significant difference. I cannot always tell. And some stories I thought they were going to be flash, and they ended up being 5,000 words. Like the story with the flowers. But the thing is that the very funny thing is that I had this novelette, Joanna's Bodies, and I got an agent out of it. She contacted me and she liked the story, and we talked, and she became my agent. And she told me, you can write this story as a novel if you want to. And the moment she said it, it made sense to me that yes, I could. And then I started writing the novel on July. And I finished it in 7 weeks, the first draft. And when I started writing it, I knew it was going to be 80,000 words long. And I finished in 7 weeks, and it was 82,000 words long. And I knew exactly what the midpoint would be, judging from the novelette, and how then the point of views would turn around. And when I was writing it, because it's not a guarantee, at around 40,000 words, the midpoint happened and the shift happened. So it was like I had a premonition about my own writing without actually planning anything.
Now, how as a pantser is that even possible? How did you do that? Do you understand how it happened or how you were able to do it? Because I never know what's going to happen.
It's just an instinct, sort of. It's like subconscious. It's just an instinct. I knew I wanted to add another subplot, and I knew that this subplot would start later. And I hoped it would start after the midpoint. And it started right after the midpoint. And it became 82,000 words, and I'm very happy that I was so right about it. Maybe I just made it happen because I kept writing it for it to become 82,000 words. So it was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
There's a particular scene of yours that I absolutely loved in one of your stories. And I want to talk about how you made it happen. The Giants of the Violet Sea, a novella from Uncanny you were nominated for. And I love the whole story, but the funeral scene, the scene when they're preparing for a funeral, which I won't talk too much about whose funeral it is because I don't want there to be spoilers, so people can come to it without knowing. It was so lyrical and transcendent in its use of language and its slow move through what was happening that it really took me away to another place. I wasn't reading anymore. I was just lifted away. And were you aware as you were writing that particular scene that it was a special scene, and how did you make that happen? Or were you just writing the way you always do and it's just another scene in the story? Because I found that scene to be so spectacular. Those, I guess in my reading on the Kindle, I don't know how many pages it was in the real world, but I guess it seemed as it was a 4 or 5 page long building to preparing for the funeral and having the funeral and the slight aftermath. How do you achieve that effect, and how much of it is conscious and how much of it is, I just write the next right word?
Generally, okay, with this what happened was that this was a novelette initially, and the people who read it told me this should probably be longer, but they didn't tell me it should be a novella. They just said you should add more things about the mother and some other things. And so I wrote that pre-Clarion, the novelette. I left it there because it was broken. And then after Clarion, I saw that Uncanny had a call for novellas, and I wrote the rest of it in like a week, 10 days, because I was trying to catch the deadline. So that scene was in the second half. It wasn't in the initial novelette. So I was speed writing again, so like with the novel.
You're telling, so it ended earlier? The story did not go as far as it did? Or
no,
just you skipped
actually,
over
it happened the same thing as with the novel. I already had the ending, and it changed a little bit, and I added stuff in the middle. I stuffed the middle. And the same thing happened with the novel, but a bit different, because the ending is a bit different, because there is another subplot which changes the ending a little bit. But more or less, it's the same. But with the Giants, I wrote that scene, and generally, I write regularly, but there are some scenes that, you get into the zone even more than usual. And because I'm very familiar with Greek funerals and funeral practices, because we have a lot of, tradition around it, I knew how to adapt it to become a bit more science fictional, but also more fantasy. And I think I got into the zone of that, because I was always drawn to funerals, even as a child, and funeral food, which I added in my country as a ghost, which is one of my favorite foods, actually. Very tasty.
Funeral food?
Yes. The koliva, the one I have at the end of My Country is a Ghost.
So those are only made for funerals?
Yes.
So that someone has to die for you to eat it? You don't eat it the rest of it?
A funeral or, in Greek we call it mnemosyno, a memorial. So you can make it in memorial. You don't have to kill anyone, it's fine. So you can make it every day, but you have to make it for someone who is dead.
All right, so you think of them as you're cooking it and making it and all of that. Okay.
Yes, and it's also symbolic, like in the story. You have to have a specific number of ingredients.
So if I were Greek and I read that story, would I see something different than I see as an American? Meaning, would I be able to perceive the
My Country is a Ghost, or in the...
Well, in Giants of the Violent Sea, you're talking the funeral scene in there. Would I perceive the story differently? What do I not see, not being Greek, that a Greek reader would see? Are the things I'm not picking up on?
The relationship with while the funeral, the relationship with the sea. We don't have sea burials, but especially in islands and in places that the sea is closed, there is a lot of connection to it, and people might mourn there, but might take not the body, but the people, the funeral there. They are also very conscious about preparing the body. We don't have, I think you call it embalming in America.
Right.
We don't have
There's
open.
no embalming in Greece?
No. And we do not have, usually we don't open, I mean, it can be open, but you won't go the extra step to make the person prettier, I guess.
Yes. Well, I mean, there are people in the States who don't want to do the embalming. They want to return to the earth, so they get buried in a very simple coffin, and they intend to, I mean, there are people who get buried under trees, so the tree, but that's, I think, a small percentage of people in the States as opposed to the people who...
But that's the majority in Greece because
Greece,
we're Orthodox. Okay. But also we have a lot of mourners. We have a traditional mourners that got paid to come and cry in funerals. That was a big part of our tradition. So
I know they have that in Japan. I didn't realize they have that in Greece also, who are hired to come and...
So we also had, we have them when you are preparing the body. And I think that was heavily influenced by that specific tradition. And also afterwards, after the body is decomposing, because there is not a lot of space in Athens, and there is most of the population of Greece is in Athens, you dig it up, and you see the bones, and then you have the bones in a box in the ossuary. And because that was the story I wrote in Elizabeth Hunt's first week in Clarion. She asked us to write a personal story, an experience we actually had, and then to fictionalize it the next day.
Oh, interesting.
And that became a harvest of bones that I sold to Deadlands, the fictionalized version. The real version was about digging up my mom's bone, but I also had from my grandma, because when I visited the cemetery with my mom when I was a little, I could see my mom taking care of my grandma's bones. And she would say, oh, look, this is your grandma's finger bone and stuff. And also when I was at the grave, because we have like white graves with marble, because it's plenty in Greece. So there was a small hole there, and I used to throw stones in the hole. And mom would say, your grandma will feel the stones now that you're throwing at her. I was like, oh no.
Well,
do you
like that?
Oh. It wasn't that scary. It was like, someone chastises you for pulling your grandma's dress or something.
Right. So you had the feeling that she was actually present?
Yeah, underneath the earth, like she was sleeping, basically, and I would disturb her.
How does a pantser work with world building? That story we're talking about, there's a lot of world building in there with the aquatic life and the flora and fauna and everything. Because you're a pantser, well, a lot of people who do world building will design the whole world first, figure out how everything works, and then write the story in it. But as a pantser, do you write the story and say, I'll have it all make sense when I do a revision or something? How did you deal with building the world and the environment as a pantser?
I work usually, which is I don't work with world building. I work with voice. That's the first thing. That's why For me, the hardest thing is to start a story because I have to find the right voice. Once I have the voice, I know the story will be written. I'm okay. Everything is in the voice. Whatever is in the content doesn't matter. The voice matters. And then it's the character. So if I have a voice and the character, the world building is like, oh, I am a character and I'm walking around doing things according to my personality. What do I see? I see a rock there. Oh, that's interesting. What does this rock have? So basically, I don't plan the world building. It's what my character sees. And I'm just in the mind of that character. And I'm like, what would it be cool to see right now if I was that person in that strange land? And then after it's written, I might go and fix some inconsistencies and fill in to make it more consistent as a world building and to make it make sense and be more believable. But while I'm writing, the world building is what the character sees as they walk around that place. And the initial premise. The initial premise might have, a bit of world building in it.
And what they see just pops into your head as you're doing the writing.
Yes.
Because I'm like, I don't know 3 sentences ahead until I get there.
Yes,
I start writing, and it's like, wow, I wasn't thinking about that a minute ago, and now I know what's on the wall when I didn't before.
Like that. I'm on eye level with the character, and I'm looking what they're looking at.
Have you ever done any acting? Or any improv? The reason I ask is because that's what helps me write, because having done acting, and when you act, at least when I would do it, you knew the character so well that you were supposed to be, that whatever happened, you could react as the character. So you didn't have to think, how do I write this sentence? If you know who the character is, it came out the way the character would speak. But you haven't done anything like that.
No, I have not.
So,
but
everything you do is from writing.
Yeah, but I suspect I would be good with improvisation. Obviously I am because I improvise what I'm writing, right?
Yes.
But I have not done that as a training.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do maybe some acting, but mostly to improve my performance as when I read stories. I would be more performance focused.
How do you play fair when you're doing a mystery? And also, how do you pants a mystery? Meaning, for mystery, did you know where the end is? Do you know who, like when you start writing this story, there's a murderer in the story. That's a spoiler, but did you know who the murderer was? Or did you just start the story saying, I'll know who the murderer is when I get to that part of the story?
Writing a mystery is very easy, actually. First of all, because I enjoy reading mysteries.
Okay.
And I was especially influenced by Andrea Camilleri. Andrea Camilleri is an Italian, he's dead now. He was an Italian writer of mysteries, and he added a lot of political context in his mysteries. And his protagonist was Salvo Montalbano, who was a police officer, but also, sometimes he did not do the bidding of the police, and he was actually more on the left, even though he was a police officer, and he was against Berlusconi at the time. But anyway, this guy loves food, and he eats a lot, and he's in Italy, he eats a lot of small places, home-cooked dishes, and he also has a lot of relationship with the sea, because he's in Sicily. And there is a lot of sea around. And I got heavily inspired also about how the detective or the amateur detective in this case would interact with the landscape. Because it's very similar to Greece and Sicily, the landscape in Giants of the Violet. And I forgot what the question was. Mystery, okay. So, yes. So a mystery is even easier because there are specific beats. So I don't even need to outline. I know the beats instinctively because I've read. And so I just can follow them more or less in my mind the same way I more or less thought that, this novel would be 80,000 words. The same sort of vague instinct in the back of my head.
And did you know this novella was going to be 25,000 when
No, that I did not know. This was a surprise. At first I thought it was going to be a novelette anyway.
Oh.
So.
But now that it's done, you know that's the right size. That's what it's supposed to be. It shouldn't be a novel. It shouldn't be a short story. You could
write it as a short story, but it would be sort of different, and you would focus on a very specific thing.
Yeah.
But I like this being a novella.
Yeah, but I think of myself as just being a midwife helping the story be born, and I have no idea what it will be until it's done. So, and then you have to say, I'm helping it try to find its true self. So, but 25,000 words was what it was supposed to
It does
be.
feel like you are grabbing, stories from the air and you're just transmitting them into other people.
All right. Let's talk about the ending of the story. And sometimes we talk about these things. I don't know if I'm spoiling the story for whom it is yet unread, but they can skip it if they don't want to hear that. Then the ending of the story, you have a reconciliation of sorts that was surprising to me. It was not expected. I didn't see it coming, but it did not feel forced. Sometimes when people do reconciliations, you go, I don't accept that because the author did not make me believe it, but you made me believe what had happened. And I know that you pants the stories, so did you know you were going to arrive at that by the end? And how did you make sure that it was emotionally believable that would happen?
Well, I wrote the ending at the novelette stage, okay?
All right.
So I already had it, but...
So you knew, okay, well, when you wrote the novelette then,
Yes.
did you know you were heading towards that?
No, I did not know that. But I think that's why it's believable, because I did not know that. And the other reason, I think, it's because sometimes because I don't know exactly the ending, I might overwrite it, like write further into the story. And usually what happens is I cut a couple of paragraphs from the ending and I end the story earlier instead of later.
Did they teach you that at Clarion?
No, that was my partner.
Because that's one of the things I was told. So many times we would read a story and say, you started too early and you ended too late. Like, cut out part of that beginning when the person is just wondering what to do, and cut out some of the ending when you went past the ending. So that was one of the things we were told we're doing too often and we should stop doing.
I don't think I was told so specific,
Yeah.
such specific
But your partner
craft.
told you this.
My partner, because she was reading all my stuff and he's my beta reader along with Nasos. These are my two main people. He said, okay, you don't need this. You cut it off. And the same way happened with Strange Horizons in one of my stories. When Vajra was editing, he had asked for a rewrite and he told me to cut the last two paragraphs, which is the story of the mother who swallows the daughter. And says, like, this explanation is not needed, cut it out, which is again a reconciliation story of the mother and the daughter, like with the giants. So when I was writing the giants, I was like, okay, these last paragraphs are not needed, we're cutting them off, and this is a good place to stop, and I think that's what made it more believable. If I had kept writing, it would feel more forced, I believe.
Now, are you a generally hopeful person? When you write these reconciliations, is it because you are hopeful about them or you're trying to force them to happen?
No, I just think sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. Yeah. But even if they happen, it doesn't mean it will be happily ever after. It might be, a middle situation where you still have fights, but you also have some happy moments.
Let's talk a little bit about your Shirley Jackson Award-winning story, The 6 Verses That My Brother Found Under the Bridge. One of the things guidelines often say, and we're told not to do, is to deal with the devil stories. That those are things, they're so overdone and we shouldn't deal with the devil stories. And there, you go ahead and you write one and win an award for it. Tell me a little bit about that. Because so many writers' guidelines say, don't deal with the devil story to us and things like that. Did you know that there are a lot of people who don't like it, or did you just say, I'm going to write one of them that works?
I had no idea, first of all. But second, the one thing I did know was that we don't write stories where someone wakes up.
Yes, that's one of the ones,
and 5 or 6 of my first stories, someone wakes up, but you just don't notice. Like the story I sold in Apex, Cherrywood Coffin, the coffin maker wakes up and has to make a coffin. Then in the story I sold in Black Static, the woman wakes up and she sees her creation. I had at least, if I go back to my blog and I look at them, the first stories that my first sales were started with someone waking up. You just don't notice it because I'm trying to divert your attention into the other things that are happening. while they're waking up. So it's not don't write about someone waking up. It's more like do it interestingly, I guess. Do it in a way. So I had no idea about the deals with the devil thing, but when I have an idea in my mind and I want to write it, nothing can stop me because it has to be written, Doesn't matter if it's written before or people, So I wrote that when I had COVID. And it was a delirium story because I had COVID and I was watching the Junji Ito series, which is a horror series, with my friends on Netflix. And there was this episode. I usually read Junji Ito comics, but I hadn't read this particular story. And it started with a little boy with his friends going into a tunnel to investigate about ghosts, as little kids do. And there he found his sister in the pajamas. And my first thought was like, that's not the sister, obviously. And he's going to take her home, and the sister will already be there. That was my first thought. And it actually was the sister, which was very disappointing to me, personally. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write this, and it's going to be like in my head. So I stole the beginning from the Junji Ito story. And it naturally became Deal with the Devil.
And you just said, when I get to that point, I'll figure out what's supposed to happen next.
And because I had COVID, the whole story when I wrote it was a mess. When I say a mess, I mean it was exactly as it is now, but everything was out of chronological
you wrote it
order.
While you had COVID?
Yes, while I had a fever.
You could, right. So
in like 5 days.
It was a hallucination.
Yes. So I was writing it, and it's the entire story, it's there. It's the same amount, maybe it's like 300 words more. But the difference is that everything was out of chronological order. There were 10,000 flashbacks that became normal, timeline, because I could not think straight. So I just wrote everything that came to my mind and everything was out of order. So Monte, again, better at the story, and he was like, okay, 1, A, B, and he rearranged the chronology, and I was like, okay, thank you for having a brain where I can't have a brain. So basically, I'm very flexible with editing. If someone tells me, this would work better, and I agree with it, I'm very flexible with doing it. So I rearranged the story based on Monte. I again used someone else's brain. It was a team effort.
Did you have to learn to be flexible in that way? When you went to Clarion, that was probably your first time when you're sitting in a circle and 20 people are telling you what's wrong with the story.
Clarion was amazing. Yeah. The Greeks were the hard lesson.
Okay.
As I told you, because...
So you were already tough by the time you got there.
I was already, I had written like a horror story in Greek where there is the frozen father. It's a horror Santa Claus that claims killed children. And someone read it and told me that comment is still online, but in Greek. It's a time capsule comment. It's like, I really like what you did in the story. It just makes me want to throw it into the fire. Yes, I want to throw it into the fire because you write like those writers whose books I want to throw in the fire.
Oh, no.
And there are really these people and they sell a lot. I just despise them. And you did a very good job at writing like them, but in my opinion, you could do better. And this was one. There were other comments that were very passive-aggressive, or just aggressive without the passive, like that. Or there were a lot of people who were a bit, snobbish, you could say, or elitists in a way. So I already had some thick skin, but I am both thick-skinned in the sense that if someone tells me something is wrong, I am okay with it because it's your opinion, man, like the dude says. But also at the same time, I'm lazy, so it would be very easy for me to give up writing because I'm like, okay, this is not working. It's not like exactly it's a bit getting discouraged, but also like not wanting to work very hard, not to prove myself, not to work very hard on the story itself. I don't want to work hard to prove myself to others. I want to work hard because I like the story and I want to see how the story can work.
Well, it should be fun. It sounds as if it's fun. I mean, you enjoy the process. It's not something that it's work. I have to
So when I went to Clarion and people had comments, I was like, yeah, these are all very reasonable comments because nobody was mean, nobody was aggressive and needlessly, nitpicky. They were all great people.
Good.
And even if I didn't agree with the comments, I could disregard them like they could disregard mine, It's all an opinion.
Well, it sounds as if you had a very good year. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, we've gotten this far without talking about the main story that we should be talking about right now. You're up for a Hugo Award. So here we are. It is Thursday. I think it's Thursday. When you're in the WorldCon, it's every day at once. So I forget what day of the week it is. I think it's Thursday. No. Is it Thursday?
It is
Shows how
Thursday.
lost I am.
Let's see.
Yes, it's Thursday. If it wasn't Thursday, we wouldn't have found each other. So, about the story that's up for Hugo nomination. So that's 2 days from now that I think we've got the calendar figured out. Two nights from now, people are going to be, you'll find out or not find out or whatever. It's a sort of a stylistic departure for you, to me anyway, based on the other stories I've read. And that there were a couple of stories recently. That story and one I have to make sure I read the title correctly. The Life and Times of Alavira the Great is written by Titos Pavlou and reviewed by two lifelong friends. Those two stories, the one you're nominated for and that one, you have emails and blog entries and things like that. And did these come about through a conscious choice or because you suddenly realized, well, that's the way it's supposed to be? Like the one that you're nominated for.
It was all subconscious, basically. Like
You
I never
sat down
thought,
and wrote an email, and
Yes.
that was how the story
the same
began?
way I just sat down and wrote a novel because it was time to write a novel. But my subconscious said, now it's time to write this, and so I wrote it without much fuss. The same way it's with loneliness. I could never write. I was never interested, or I didn't know how to write a story with emails or reviews before. Until my brain found the right idea, it was like, okay, this story will be better told through a game and text and emails. And I was like, sure, whatever, let's do it. And I started writing. And I wanted to have some narration in between. I didn't want it to all be emails. I let that for the other story because it made sense more there. It just, if you have the right idea, and I was mostly fascinated by the game when I was writing the story. Because my brain told me, now we have to make up a game where they play and she meets her brother. And at first, my idea was that the ending would be where she meets the brother in the game.
Ah.
And it would be like they finally, find each other, and that's where the story ends. So it's a whole half story from there that my brain did not give me. And when I reached that point, I was like, no, the story is not finished. And I had to add a couple more emails with her best friend. There were fewer emails. I needed more because I figured out that this was the heart of the story, the best friend, and because she was also the inciting incident. So, yeah, I was just very fascinated by the game because I was also reading at the time Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow, the book. And it's not fantastical, it's, realism, but it's about two people who are game developers and their friendships through the years. And something about the friendship of two people since they were kids who have fight and they lose each other and then fight each other, and they also invent this game. So the story, the book felt fantastical without actually being fantastical. And did something to my mind. I was like, yes, I have to invent a game now. This is what we're doing. And okay, it wasn't complete invention because it looks a bit like all those games people played during COVID. But yeah, I liked inventing that game a lot. It was a driving force for me to keep writing the story.
Could you have written that story when you began, or is it something you had to learn how to be a different writer or have more confidence to sort of break the rules and try a different style of storytelling?
I think I would not even have the idea of doing it. You know why? Because it's not just that you need to improve yourself as a writer. You obviously need, and you keep improving, and I will keep improving, is that you don't have the vision when you are young. You don't have the vision to go further, to be bold. So what happens is that the more I read about people being bold and doing bold things, I steal their boldness. I'm great at stealing, but I'm not stealing ideas. I'm stealing ambition. That's the thing. That's what I like. So you read Sarah Pinsker's story, the one which is like a forum story. You steal that ambition and you write a Goodreads story. Because I mentioned that I was inspired by Sarah Pinsker's story. You steal ambition, basically. So when I read Ali Solekim, who is one of my favorite writers now, short story writers, I saw how she was writing characters, and I stole her ambition of making characters feel that real, funny, heartbreaking, and everything. And immediately all my stories became novelettes. Now I mostly write novelettes. I cannot write shorter. It's
really?
Because, yeah.
So
I just
the
wrote,
ideas when they come are all much more complicated than they used to be?
yes. So I read one person, and that changed my entire writing. That's not because I stole basically her ambition, and now I'm different. And then I will read something else, and I will be like, oh, that's very ambitious for me. I would not do that normally. Let me do that. And that will change my writing again. So I could not have written it because I did not have the ambition to write it. Not just because I didn't have the skill, but I didn't have the vision and the ambition to write it.
Well, there are a couple more stories I want to talk about before they kick us out of here and send us back on our way. One is Joanna's Bodies, which was inspired by Jennifer's Body, a movie that is much maligned because I think the movie was harmed by its marketing campaign. It's a much better movie than the advertising would have you believe. They were selling it one way and it was really something else. So tell me how that story came about, if you have any conscious understanding of how the inspiration led you to write your story.
I remember exactly what happened. I was taking a nap and I had this semi-lucid dream situation where there was this girl in a car and there was another person next to her, and that person was the person who owned the car. And she had stolen the car, and she has also stolen the person and had put her father's, brothers, I don't remember, spirit inside.
In your dream?
In my lucid, no, yes, in my dream. It's semi-dream. Semi-conscious, semi-unconscious. And I was like, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. It's someone who steals properties but also bodies because they don't want to part from another specific person. And I was thinking that I should write that, and it would probably be like a father or something because I wanted to go a bit, explore that side. And I was like daydreaming about it for like a while, and then suddenly at some point, as I was explaining my idea to Nasos, I thought Jennifer's body. I don't know why. Perhaps the word body, perhaps something else. And once I had this thought, this fleeting thought about Jennifer's body, it was like, yes, that somehow makes sense.
And you've seen the movie years before?
Years before, yes. But it was like, this makes sense. Having two best friends and one of them is doing that and having a toxic relationship, because this is toxic, like resurrecting something and stealing. It's a toxic situation anyway. So it just clicked. And then I inserted Jennifer into the idea. Yeah, but it was, usually for me, even if there is a retelling element or a reference to something else, the original idea does not start from the other medium. Like when I wrote a Demeter retelling, it did not start as a Demeter retelling. It started as a woman who comes back to her mother in different forms, in different creatures. And then the idea that it would be Persephone came to my mind. So if I start with the other medium, like let's say I will write a Snow White retelling, that would not work for me because my mind would be too locked in the initial story to be able to roam. So I have to have a completely random idea, and then if I am bringing something already written, to give it structure. So first it has to be a blob, and then it has to have structure. If we start with a structure, we don't give space to the story to expand.
And you discover the structure as you write the story.
Yes.
And then you go back. Are you a heavy rewriter?
No, I don't go back. As I write it and discover it, I insert it as I'm
So
working.
you don't discover, I got to go back and put something in the second page to make the fifth page make sense?
I do that, but not very much, because I am already clued in almost early, yes. So I do add some stuff, but usually not too much. It's like maybe already 80% of it has the structure required, and I have to go back very initially to fix it in the first couple of pages.
The story of yours, I gather, there's the most of you in, because you said it's a very autobiographical story, or mostly an autobiographical story, is The Bathers. I found The Bathers to be an absolutely perfect story. You know, there were stories you look at and you say, it's a good story, but this paragraph could be shortened a little, or it could take that word out, or add a word here. And I found it absolutely perfect in there. So I was just not a single false note in the entire story, as far as I'm concerned. So how did it happen? And how did this bit, whatever the bit of self was, all stories are autobiographical. You're welcome. It's a wonderful story.
Well,
everything's biographical, but this one is...
Too much, one would say. Thank you for that, because I actually think that story, because it's so autobiographical, it takes too long to start, like with a speculative element. I did not care personally because I enjoyed writing it, but I think the beginning for me was slow, even though people told me it wasn't. But for me, if I wrote it without the autobiographical elements, it would start almost with the women becoming, that monstrous thing. But because it was autobiographical, I had to explain all the context of my childhood. And that with my mom would take the bathers bus to the beach, and there would be very old people there, and there would be two women who were from Egypt. They were Greek people who lived in Egypt. There was a minority there, and they were called Egyptiots. And they had come back, and they were very different than the other Greek women in the bus. They had these earrings and the rings, and they took care of themselves a lot. I was very fascinated by them, and I would climb over the seat and discuss with them and say, what is this stone? What is this other? And they would always reply, and they were very polite and very well spoken. And they would talk in in Greek, when you talk to an older person and you want to show respect, you talk in the plural.
Which is?
Well, in English it would be you again, but it would be plural, you. So you, instead of saying εσύ, which is you in singular, you say εσείς. It's plural, you. So they would do that. They were very different. So I was very fascinated by them. And by, generally older people being cast aside a bit because people have their eyes on younger people, and especially when it's about women. But they did not care. They were very impressive. So anyway, something in that worked. And also I actually had a friend who was only for the summer, and we dig traps in the sun, and he had an older brother, and his older brother was a bit of a jerk, and he would bully us, and we would climb the boats and jump in the water from them, and we would gather limpets, and we would also gather sea urchins from the rocks. And my mom was great at gathering sea urchins from the rocks and opening them and eating them on the spot. All of these were very biographical.
One of the difficulties with autobiographical stories is that just because something happened in real life does not make narrative sense. Yeah. So often people do an autobiography and, okay, it may be interesting, but it's not a story. So how do you provide a story layered over the autobiographical section and have it have a closure that when it comes to an ending, it's an ending?
I think part is because my mother, when she narrated her memories to me, she narrated them as stories. They always had a beginning, a middle, and an ending. They had a narrative arc. So every story of her life, of her personal life, had a narrative arc. So I think my mom was the OG storyteller, and very oral storyteller feeling. And I remember us talking, and I was very big into TV. I was a TV kid because I didn't have many friends when I was a kid. But when it was time to eat and sit next to my mom, I would not care about the TV. I would ask her for stories from the past.
So you would ask her, you would prompt her. She wouldn't come to you to tell stories.
She would say a story or two in the past, but then I would say, tell me more about that. Tell me more about the past, and tell me, even I was a small kid. Or tell me more about that story. Tell me again. Tell me the story again, and tell me all the details again. And sometimes she would forget the details, and I would remind her because that's what made an impression on me. So I think that made me think of my own memories as stories and add arcs to them anyway, because I'm trying to make sense of the past. We are all trying to make sense of the past, and we are making stories in our minds, even if they're not perfect, like publishable stories. They might have a little bit of an arc in there. But yeah, I think thinking of memories as stories with an arc probably came from my mom and the oral storytelling.
So she was your first writing teacher then, basically?
Yeah,
in a subconscious way.
Yes.
Now, is she still with us?
No. She's
what?
She's dead. I saw her bones, as we said.
Well, that's true. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, was she alive long enough to read any of your stories? Did she? So was she aware of your ambition to become a writer?
I was already writing a little bit, but she hadn't read any of my stories. But that was not a big deal for me. I don't know. I usually, even when I was doing the comics, she was alive long enough to see my comic.
Oh, good.
But I'm not going to say it wasn't important because it was nice that she was happy that I was drawing. I used to show her my drawings when I was a kid. So that all for me is the same. It doesn't matter if she would see a book published by me. That would be great, I guess. But it doesn't matter. I was already showing her my creative output ever since I was a kid. So in my mind, publishing a book and showing her a drawing I did when I was 10, it's the same thing. It's not more important than the other. And I think in her mind as well. So it doesn't matter that she didn't live long enough to see a book published or a story published because she saw my earlier work. I mean, obviously I would like her to still be alive in general, but...
Well, it sounds as if based on your description of your culture and visiting the ossuary that you almost feel as if she's aware of it anyway. I mean, if you're going there if grandma's there and you're dropping stones on her, it sounds as if there is a connection. So maybe you feel
maybe she knows.
As if that happened anyway.
Maybe she knows.
So here we are at WorldCon, and I know you're on several panels this weekend. We've got the isolation horror when you're the food chain and best of the bad. For the people who couldn't be here this weekend, to hear you share your wisdom with the audience, what is it that you were talking about here? What would people...
I have not talked about them yet.
You haven't done your panels yet?
They are tomorrow, on Friday.
Oh, they're all
Hopefully,
tomorrow.
Otherwise I was a no-show for my panel.
Well, I don't remember what day it is, so hopefully you have a better sense of what day of the week it is than I do, because I'm all confused.
Well, one idea for the isolation panel that I have is that you have to have hubris. Someone has to have hubris in the sense of because the isolation horror panel, I think, is focused on wilderness and that you are putting yourself in some sort of, difficult situation in the climate-wise. So, for example, in The Witch, in the movie, the patriarch has hubris. He thinks he can, survive in the absolute wilderness with his family and thrive. And that is a little bit the same with The Shining, that the man brings his family in the hotel and he thinks he can change their fate, perhaps, and he can't. I think hubris and a little self-delusion is important for you to put yourself in a very difficult circumstance. And sometimes it might be, all the mythological Greek, the gods smacking you for your hubris.
Well, it's necessary to even try and do what you and I are doing, to be a writer.
Yeah.
To think that anybody gives a damn what either of us has to say to the world. Look, I made something and you should pay attention. So that it's certainly
Hopefully nobody will come and kill us with an axe.
That's right. Well, you'll be looking over your shoulder between now and Saturday night. So,
Yeah.
you know. So when did you start going to conventions? You went to that comic book convention in Greece where you found out about comics.
That was my first convention, but wasn't exactly like this one. Besides comic conventions, I've only been to 3 Worldcons, and that's it. Greek comics conventions and 3 Worldcons. So the one in Helsinki, the one in Glasgow, and this one.
And Helsinki was
2017.
So that was very early. So we would not have. We were walking the same turf, but we did not meet.
I was in the same place with some of my Clarion West classmates, and I did not know them then.
So you did Helsinki, and then you did the
Glasgow last
year. Okay, we didn't bump into each other there.
No, I didn't think so.
So how are you at conventions? Are you exhausted by all this?
I don't have a measure.
So, because some people are, they're just full of energy and they go home and they're just high. And other people are, I'm exhausted, I need to sleep for a week.
I mean, I was already exhausted because I haven't slept for 2 days to come here.
That is true, I forgot that. And yet you have been surprisingly coherent, or not surprisingly, you have been very coherent, but surprisingly coherent for someone who hasn't slept, however, now that I know
it's probably all the adrenaline from the travel and just coming here and finding a bunch of people and more people that I don't know and everything. It's probably a lot of adrenaline.
Yes, you were mentioning the party you were at last night where you were
I could not take 2 steps without talking to someone.
No, it's hard to explain to people who don't have this family, I think of it as a family, that you can be in a room and say, I know 100 people in this room, and I could one-on-one probably talk to that person all night, and yet I'm sort of hopping around to people, and maybe over the course of a decade, I'll get more time with each one and somehow put something together.
It's very interesting.
But I mean, we're very lucky, I think, that most people don't have that kind of found family where you can walk into a room and feel welcomed by all of these people who you move through. And I think there's an understanding that you don't even necessarily need to, you'd love to spend more hours with each one. But such as before we met this morning, I bumped into Jordan Corella in the hallway as I was looking for you. And Jordan, who was a previous guest on the show, not that we're close friends or anything, but I feel a bond there because we're both embarked. We both have hubris together in this thing of ours. Yes. So, we paid the check. There's a convention waiting for us. I'm so happy we had a chance to chat here and learn more about you. I love your writing, and I'm glad to get to meet you as a person.
Thank you so much.
So thank you.
Thank you for this invitation. It was all delicious, and the questions were also delicious.
Oh, thank you. And you're a wonderful, wonderful writer, and I'm glad you're a part of this family that we're talking about. So thank you. So
maybe in the next convention, we will meet again, and I will know you, so I will come straight and say hi.
Yes. I've been going to these things since I was 15 years old, so I've spent my entire life bouncing off this. There are people who I bumped into this weekend who I've met today, who I met 5 years ago, who I met 10. There are people I met when I was a teenager. So it's like a big family reunion for me all the time.
It is, and new members keep getting added. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's someone I had breakfast with this morning. I've been having breakfast at every WorldCon for the last 35 years. So it's just an ongoing, and we only see each other here. We don't get to see each other the rest of the world. But anyway, I'm glad you're part of this. I love your writing, and let's get back to the party.
Yes, and I love this conversation.
I hope you out there also loved our conversation. If after breaking bread with Eugenia, Triantafyllou, and me, you'd like to find out more about her, check her out on Blue Sky as Fox and Roses, which is FOXESANDROSES, or at her site, which is EugeniaTriantafyllou.com, spelled EugeniaTriantafyllou.com. You can track down my daily babbling on either Blue Sky or Mastodon, where I go by Scott Edelman, And you can find out more about the stories I've published and the magazines I've edited at scottedelman.com. And if there's anything you want to share with me, give me a shout at scott@scottedelman.com. And all those Scott Edelmans are SCOTTEDELMAN. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll take a moment to rate or review Eating the Fantastic at Apple Podcasts and like it on Facebook, because the way the analytics work, that will help bring the podcast to the attention of a potential wider audience. If my meal with Eugenia has you hungering to sit in for more of my conversations with creators of the fantastic, there are many ways to make sure you never miss an episode. You can head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Eating the Fantastic, and subscribe, or you can search on the terms Podlink and Eating the Fantastic in your browser, and that'll take you to a site with several dozen possible places to download the show, one of which will hopefully be your preferred method. Or you can use the RSS feed, which you'll find at eatingthefantastic.com. That's also where you'll be able to check out a photo of Eugenia, as well as the food we shared at Seattle's Din Tai Fung. If you'd like to help keep new episodes of Eating the Fantastic showing up every other Friday, I hope you'll join the supporters who cover some of the cost of the show. The books I buy to keep up with my guests' work, the equipment, the bandwidth, the transportation of my guests to and from cons and restaurants, the cloud processing software which kills most of the ambient noise which would obscure our conversation, and of course that food which helps relax my guests and creates, as I said at the start, an intimacy you're not going to get out of a studio recorded podcast. The easiest way to help out is to toss a couple of bucks in the tip jar at paypal.me/eatingthefantastic. Or if you feel like buying me a cup of coffee, head over to coffee.com/eatingthefantastic, where the coffee's KO-FI. But if you'd like to feel even more connected with what I'm doing here, you could chip in with a small recurring monthly donation over at patreon.com/eatingthefantastic, where there are perks involved depending on your level of support. A big thank you once again to Alex Under the Sky at Audio Jungle, composer of this episode's theme music. Tomorrow, here in the flesh and blood world, if you're listening to the episode the day I brought it live, that is, I'll be attending DitkoCon, a one-day convention celebrating the legendary Steve Ditko in his hometown of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. If all goes well, I'll be returning with another conversation for you from a comics creator I first met more than half a century ago. Wish me luck. Coming up 2 weeks from now on the podcast, you'll be able to head out during the Seattle Worldcon for Texas Barbecue with John Boccaccio, one of the most acclaimed American artists in science fiction and fantasy over the last decade, a winner of 3 Hugo Awards, 9 Chesley Awards, and many other accolades. He's also the co-author with Lee Bardugo and the illustrator of The Invisible Parade, released earlier this month. I hope you'll join us. Until then, may all your meals and those conversations which go with them be fantastic.